Welcome to Nasdaq TradeTalks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq, coming to you live from Consensus in Austin, Texas. Joining us for this segment, we have Fred Thiel. He's CEO of Marathon Digital Holdings, and we're here to discuss supporting the development and implementation of renewable energy projects. Fred, it's great to see you again. Welcome back to Trade Talks.
Great to be here.
All right, and you signed an important agreement May 24th in DC. Tell us more about that.
Yes, we signed a memorandum of understanding with the government of Kenya, where essentially we're going to work with them to evaluate underutilized energy assets that they have in the country, and also work with them to see how they can adopt crypto for different uses, and then try and find ways to monetize that underutilized energy to mine Bitcoin and use it for other purposes as well.
It's interesting, Kenya's electricity, over 80% of it is from renewable energy?
Yeah, it's a great country in the sense that you have lots of hydroelectricity, you have lots of solar energy, and hydro and solar compete with each other in the sense that during the day, the solar assets generate so much energy that the hydro assets go underutilized. And so we can use the energy from the hydro assets during the day, shut down our systems in the evening, then the hydro assets can feed the country when the sun's not shining and the solar isn't producing. And so it works out really well for everybody.
It sounds like areas in the US could also benefit. Let's take California as an example, where they're generating so much solar during the day, but then when you're thinking about peak hours at night, sounds like that kind of technology can be replicated there too.
Absolutely, I mean, Texas is a great example of where that's actually being done very effectively, right? There are multiple gigawatts of solar and wind energy in Texas that during the day, through either congestion, due to lack of transmission capacity, or just lower demand, aren't able to be properly utilized. And so we have a lot of sites in Texas that we operate exactly like that.
So let's tell us more about that. How will you work with Kenya to execute on this project? What's some of the mechanics behind this?
Yeah, so the mechanics are, we form a committee together with the government. They essentially provide us all the data on their energy assets. We work with them to evaluate and kind of triage the list down to which are the most attractive assets to use for Bitcoin mining potentially, what assets should they be using for other purposes, and then we essentially start working with them to develop projects at the sites in kind of a priority order, starting with some hydro assets that are underutilized and then working our way through a greater list of assets over time.
So it sounds like in addition to growing renewable energy resources, you're also looking to promote economic development as well by introducing digital assets on a more scalable basis there?
Absolutely, well, you know, Kenya is a very interesting country. They were the first one to use a digital asset, the M-Pesa, which was essentially started in 2007. It was essentially credits on cell phones, and people who didn't have access to banks were able to trade using these credits on cell phones. Today there are tens of millions of people in Kenya that use it. It's actually used in 17 different countries across Africa, and it's been one of the most successful digital currencies, if you would, for daily use out there. And so the people in Kenya are very familiar with digital currencies. And Bitcoin has this benefit of being able to bring a combination of energy power to the population centers, as well as the ability to be banked, essentially.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of us with a Western mindset tend to think very Western-centric. Meanwhile, there are billions of people, whether it's in Africa, Southeast Asia, Latin America, that transact, and they've built microeconomies because of this type of infrastructure.
Absolutely, so we in the West think of Bitcoin as an asset that you invest in. Oh, I'm going to put my money in Bitcoin, right? The whole structure in the US is designed for Bitcoin around that way. When you look in the developing world, it's a very different story. There are circular economies in Costa Rica, in Panama, El Salvador, in Africa, where people rely on cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin as a way to protect themselves from the debasement of the fiat currencies in the country that they live in. You look at Argentina, for example, 50% devaluation of the currency since December of last year. What do people do? How should they hold their assets, right? And then you look in places like Costa Rica and Panama, where villages that were essentially cut off from the banking system during COVID have been able to build circular economies where women started weaving, selling the products that they made, they buy the materials with Bitcoin, they sell what they've made with Bitcoin, and you have this circular economy, and it does a number of things. It provides financial independence to these villages. It also provides women with the ability to hold their assets and not be under the control of their husbands, who in many countries, women aren't allowed to have bank accounts. And so this plays a really important role in the developing world.
All right, appreciate the insight, Fred. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks, and thanks for joining me from Consensus. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.